David.
Hello, Sergio. How you doing?
Doing good.
Hello, Andrea. Hello.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yep.
Good.
Sound great. Look great. And I think Sergio's mic sounds like it's better today.
Working this month.
Yeah, much better.
Hey guys, I'm going on mute.
Okay, thanks, Vicky.
Oh, there we are.
Hi, Don.
Hi, how are you doing, Dave?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Hello, Colleen.
Hi.
There's Jerry. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
There's Vita.
Hey, Vita.
Jerry, you're looming in the dark a little bit. Maybe that's how you like it.
Yeah, it's I have very poor lighting here, so it's kind of this like shadowy figure. I don't have any other light other than what I have on in the room, so maybe I could get a flashlight like Halloween.
There's Fred. Hi, Fred.
There are bubbling sounds as though there's a river running by us.
I hear that.
Huh?
I don't know where it's coming from, but I hear it too.
You hear it too? Okay, good.
Yep,
I
I
hear
do too.
I think it might be coming from Dave Stack.
I was thinking the same thing.
I don't hear it. I hope it's clean and unpolluted.
It's the Bassett Creek River. Okay. How long do you want to wait before everybody is there?
Well, it looks like we have 15 people. Is that what everybody else has?
Yeah.
Then I suppose we could start with introductions.
Okay.
I'm Don Osmondson. I'm chairing the meeting and I'm a Harrison neighborhood representative.
Hey, Dave, I think we're getting a lot of feedback from your mic. Do you mind muting until you talk?
Okay. Dave,
Hi,
you wanna
Vicky
go?
Moore. I'm here for Councilperson Jeremiah Ellison.
I think just kind of go around and introduce yourselves. I can't quit. We're not sitting around a table, so it's hard for me to go from one to the other. So
I'm Vita Ditter, and I've been a member of the Bassett Creek group. Don, since when? Since
well, I know we got
98?
about 20 years in. I know that.
It's more than that. I think since 98.
Yeah, it is more than that. You're right.
Yeah. David?
I'm Dave Stack, Friends of Bassett Creek representative, and I started with this group in '98, and I've been with it for many years, and a few years off here and there.
Okay. Colleen?
Yeah, Colleen Belmont. I'm in Bryn Mawr neighborhood and I'm representative of Bryn Mawr Neighborhood Association.
Okay. David?
David Wellington, business member since I think 2017.
Jerry?
Thank you, Vita. Jerry Krause, used to live in Bryn Mawr, was on the ROC for about 17 years or something like that, and sold our house, so I'm a free-range chicken. I'm in Edina right now, living with my 100-year-old mother-in-law and providing some care to her.
Oh, good for you.
Congratulations. Wow. Sergio.
She's actually almost 101, and she's
Yeah.
actually doing quite well.
That's exciting.
Benjamin Mancero, business member of the ROC since 2019-18.
Fred?
I think you're muted.
I'm not muted, but sometimes I have trouble with my audio.
Yeah, turn the volume up. Yeah.
Since we can't hear you, I will introduce you. This is Fred Olson, and he is an alternate for Friends of Bassett Creek. Casey, you next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Casey Carl, and I am the city clerk here in the city of Minneapolis. Pleased to be with you tonight.
Andrea?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrea Brennan. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development.
Vicki?
Yes, I introduced myself earlier. I guess I should say that I've been mostly on, sometimes off the ROC since 1998, and been an H&A rep, and also have represented a variety of council people from Ward 5.
Naomi?
Hi, everyone. Naomi Chu, appointed by Lisa Goodman to ROC and fairly new in the last year and a half, and I live in Bryn Mawr.
Tim?
Tim Davis, Harrison resident, mayor's appointee to the ROC. Laura is on her way, by the way. She just called to say that she's been having connection issues, so she's going to come over here and she'll be joining me shortly, but just to give a preview of that one as well.
Okay. Nicole?
Hi, everyone. Nicole Bueller. I'm the executive director for the Harrison Neighborhood Association.
Okay. Michael? There's a Michael Munson.
Hey everyone, Mike Munson. Nice to meet you all. I am the presenter for the second half on the proposed 250 Fremont project. So looking forward to talking more about that.
Okay. Jim?
Hello, I'm Jim Vole. I'm a planner with CPED in the community planning section of CPED.
Mackenzie?
Hello, I'm Mackenzie Erickson. Not a rep, just a resident of Bryn Mawr and Harrison.
Eric?
Everyone, Eric Elgin, H&A rep for the ROC, live in Area 5.
Is that everybody? Okay, I think so.
All right, pure so.
The first item on the agenda, I'm sorry, Don, I just want to say a couple of things. First
No, go ahead,
item,
Vita.
huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, on the agenda is talking about how ROC should be formed, what it should be like, and all that kind of stuff. But before we start that discussion, I wanted to get everybody on board. The ROC came into existence when Steve Kramer was the executive director back in October of 2000. And we did a whole bunch, four public meetings to find out what people wanted for the Bassett Creek Valley. Bassett Creek Valley lies half in Bryn Mawr and half in Harrison. The largest of those meetings was about 300 people, and I was amazed at how many different kinds of people lived in the Harrison community. We had Lao, we had Hmong, we had Somali, we had homeowners, we had renters, we had whites, we had blacks, it was about 300 plus. And what they did was we sat at different tables and they told us what they wanted and how they wanted the Bassett Creek Valley to look like when it was, that was what we were to work for. Our plan was approved on the same day by the City Council as the Heritage Park. And one thing we as Bassett Creek Valley learned was that the Heritage Park, and Casey, you can correct me on this, but it was multiple millions by the court that was for development in that area. It was to be called Heritage Park. And one of the things that the court was really upset about and wanted to make sure it did not happen again was that there would be no more congregation cluster of poverty in any part of the city. And that included Heritage Park, that included Harrison, that included Bassett Creek Valley. Anyway, so we presented on the same day. This was in 2007. We had Tom Layton, I think, perhaps Daryl Washington as CPED advisors at the time. And we expressed concern that we had spent all these many years from 2000 to 2007 working on coming up with a master plan. And our concern was, okay, so the city accepts it. What happens to that afterwards? Do they forget about it? Who carries it out? Who makes sure that what we had asked for would be carried out? The advice we got is fine. Make the last chapter of the master plan that you want the city council to create a small organization made up of all the entities in the Bassett Creek Valley, and they would encourage development and they would advise the city on development in the Bassett Creek Valley. And that's how we were formed. We have always carried out, to the best of our ability, two ways of conducting business. One was we don't interrupt. And two, we try to get to consensus on any idea. And once we reach consensus, it doesn't matter what your view was, you will support that consensus. Okay, that's us in a nutshell.
Nicely done, Vita.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add or subtract from that?
I'd like to jump in and add a little bit about citizen participation, because during, again, this is a history element, where at once upon a time, it was believed that all of the money that went into the city went into downtown development, and that very little of the money was flowing out to neighborhood development. And unfortunately, it was believed, whether it was true or not, there was too much of a swinging door between what is now CPED and the development community, and those things that ended up in neighborhoods, that the people that lived in the neighborhoods had very little to say about what was happening. And so there was a big push for citizen participation. This would be right before the neighborhood revitalization program, which really was very much focused on citizen participation. And part of that was not just for the city of Minneapolis, but the University of Minnesota and other colleges, to bring those resources that are within those communities, such as Tom Layton. And then there were people that came from the Humphrey Institute to be advisors to ad hoc citizen groups, which were really not committees, but they really were ad hoc citizen groups, such as the ROC, to provide input, to the development process.
Does anybody hear Fred now? I'll say a couple of things in addition. I don't know, I have trouble with configuration. I got a couple different video cameras that have speakers. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, couple of things. One, I've missed the last couple of meetings as an alternate from Friends of Bassett Creek, but the recordings have been very helpful in catching up, and I appreciate them. Also, when I learned last Friday that Vicki was going to be departing, I called Ellison's office and said I would consider being his representative. I haven't heard anything back, and of course it depends on what becomes of ROC status and so on. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thank you, Fred.
I would be very happy to hand this off to you. So we'll just have to figure out how we're going to move forward and how representation becomes defined.
In the past, representation has been that the city council member, the mayor, whoever, writes us and tells us that this is who they want representing them, period. We've not had big to-dos about it. Like Lisa called me and said, I'm using Naomi as my second representative, city council member. And the same has been true for the rest of us who are representatives of somebody in the city. Thank you, Fred, for offering, because you've got quite a bit of history with us too.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, should we have our guests give us their interpretation?
Okay. You want to start, Andrea, or does Casey want to start?
I can get us started. I think Casey, as our city clerk, has the most expertise when it comes to the process and procedures of the city council in and how those processes and procedures have evolved pretty significantly since the ROC was first formed in 2000. So we, CPAD has been the department that has had I think the strongest connection with the ROC over all of the years. We had Beth Rosen in our business development section of our economic policy and development division in CPAD participate in your meetings, probably going back all the way to 2000. I want to say, I don't know if you did.
No, that was Tom Layton, and then it was Daryl Washington, and then Beth came. Oh, I don't know. When did Beth join us? Somewhere about mid 2000s.
Yeah, I think that's right.
About 2010 or so. But we started with Tom Layton and then moved to Daryl Washington.
Beth came after the Van White Bridge was completed, I think.
Could be.
And because I remember asking Daryl, did you think you were going to retire before this was done?
By the way, that's Michael Martins, and he's a member of ROC also.
So then when Beth retired recently, we wanted to make sure that we continued that CPED, that we continued to have a connection with ROC, that we had a presence so that we could make sure that we could connect you to information and resources at the city, and that we could also take back comments and thoughts and issues that the ROC is discussing, and talk about that internally in our work. So Jim has been participating in your meeting since Beth left, and has kept all of us abreast of discussions that have occurred since then. So I want to say that that we have the reason why we've dedicated staff to participating in this group and continue to do so is because we've really valued your time and contributions and advice that you've offered. And so we wanted to make sure that we were continuing to support that. But we also wanted to make sure that we were sharing the information that all of you need to understand sort of how the process and procedures and requirements for being an official, quote, official advisory committee of the City Council, that there's a specific process, and then there's a set of procedures that need to be followed. So we wanted to make sure Casey was here to share that information, and then be here so that you can ask him questions directly. I also want to say that there are committees and there are groups of folks that have been meeting and around common issues and around common geography, and that have been meeting more informally, meaning, and all I mean by that is that they aren't officially recognized as an advisory committee or board or commission of the city of Minneapolis, and but they meet informally, and they write letters to the elected officials, to the city council, to the mayor, to city staff, and provide advice and provide their opinions and comments that we have always, that we take into consideration as important community input whenever there's activity that the city is engaged in that's relevant to the work, the body of work, or that particular geography. So what I'm trying to say is that we work with both, formally adopted, recognized committees of the City Council, as well as also work with more informal type groups. So I'm just going to leave it at that as kind of an introduction. I'm happy to also answer questions about the role of my department and ways that we can better engage with you and others in the Bassett Creek area. So maybe now Casey could jump in and talk about what does it mean to be an advisory committee of the city of Minneapolis.
Yeah, so thank you, Andrea, and to everyone, good evening, nice to be with you. My name is Casey Carl. I have the privilege of serving as the city clerk, as Andrea mentioned. And in that capacity, I help the city council with one of its functions, which is the creation, maintenance, and appointment of various advisory boards, commissions, committees, work groups, task forces, things of that nature. And so that is formalized through a number of different ordinances, council rules, policies that we follow as we create an advisory body in an official capacity, give it its official purpose, its task, define what its parameters are, its membership, the number of seats, how those seats are appointed, by whom, for specific terms, whether the group is to be an ongoing permanent group or to live a life and at some point sunset or terminate. Those things are usually decided by resolution of the council, approved by the mayor. My brief look into the background of this group, and because it was formed in the early 2000s, ultimately, I think official action in 2006-ish, 2007-ish, and I know others here know specifically the date, but let's say mid 2000s. That sort of predated a lot of these other changes and procedural improvements and efforts to standardize that I have mentioned, that Andrea mentioned. And so we do have some groups that were sort of just created by council without a formal act, without a formal resolution. My guess, because I cannot find any record in our archive of an official act creating this body, is that the council sort of said, yeah, that's a good idea. It was existing. It provided input on the development of the master plan for the Bassett Creek area. And because it existed beforehand, because it had input on the development of that plan, it was a recommendation the group should continue to be active in terms of helping guide development. That it sort of got through on a grandfather clause, if you will. It just existed. I can't find an official act creating it. I can't find an act that defines how many seats, who appoints them. So with respect, I heard people introducing themselves tonight as I'm Lisa's appointment. I'm the mayor's representative. I'm sure that you are, or that person made that appointment. I can't verify that. I will tell you there's no official city action that does that. And so to that point, I would say that this is, I would classify this as an informal group, not created by the city in an official capacity, that certainly has a long standing, works in a cooperative relationship with the city, primarily in partnership with its CPED department on issues of common interest within a defined territory or region, this being the Bassett Creek area, and all the things that Andrea mentioned. The pros and cons of being or not being an official city group, we can debate those. I would offer that it seems to me that your group is structured and operates, and certainly you have a long history and people with long memories who recall that history that are informing your work. So it feels to me as an outsider that your group is well structured that way. I would say that from my own office's perspective, because you are not a city entity in terms of being created by and going through those formal processes, where we have had trouble is where we've had requests for access to minutes from years ago, or documentation that supposedly belongs to this group. Well, we don't keep that because the clerk's office doesn't have an official connection to this group. So we're unable to do a lot of historical research on your own minutes and your own actions. We don't have those in the clerk's records or archives. Or tracing back who were members and how were those members appointed. Again, we don't have that. And so that is an example of an area where not being within the city's sort of system of advisory bodies created by the mayor and the council is lack of that sort of institutional memory codified in the archives of the city's records management program. So I think that's an obvious issue there. The process of becoming an official body at this point, having existed for more than a decade, I think it would be challenging, but not something that couldn't be overcome. I think it's more a matter of the group reaching consensus, whether it feels there is some significant additional value to being an official group created by an official act or resolution of the mayor and the council. Certainly that would require us to rethink how those appointments are made. We'd have to start tracking terms. There'd have to be formal action to get people appointed. That can take time, obviously, to get boards appointed and get those terms put in place. And so there is some bureaucratic, I think, red tape that I would caution you about in terms of becoming an official city group, that as an informal group, you don't necessarily have to go to. Someone here mentioned they got a call and said, hey, I want you to be my second representative. Okay, great. As long as the group agrees that that's how it's operating, I guess that's the process for doing it. That's not the way the city operates in terms of its official boards, commissions, committees, and other groups. And so I would just highlight some of those differences. Happy to answer specific questions if there are any. I'm not quite sure what direction you'd like us to go, but I'm happy to adjust and move in whatever direction the group would like to move in terms of getting clarification or questions answered by either myself or Andrea tonight.
Okay, I have a question. Casey, are you familiar with the letter that came out of MCDA dated October 21, 2000 and signed by Chuck Lutz? And that's where we were told that we were being created as an informal but advisory body to the city council. It says appointment of representatives to BCV Redevelopment Oversight Committee, ROC. Our job is review of development applications. Our job is act as an advisory committee in prioritization and staging of activities, act as advisory committee in formulation of redevelopment plans, review MCDA land disposition actions, recommend modifications to the master plan as needed. This went to the chairs of the neighborhood associations and the business association. It was approved, I believe, by the city council members of that day. So my question is, where does that leave us? There may not have been, in that they approved the Bassett Creek Master Plan, the 2007 one, and the last chapter says, please create an ongoing committee that would review, and I just read all the things that they were responsible for. When they accepted and approved that plan, did they not also accept that last chapter, which ends up with MCDA creating these tasks for this group to provide?
I can't give you a definitive answer for a number of reasons. First and foremost, I wasn't here at that time. And as I said, in the clerk's records, as I've looked back, I don't find those records. So it could be a combination of poor record keeping combined with, as I mentioned, changes in practices and procedures over time since early 2000. I do have in front of me on this other screen a copy of the Bassett Creek Valley Master Plan that was adopted. And I can share with you the letter you are citing from Mr. Lutz does copy almost verbatim language that's in that report. So I'm pretty sure that language probably got pulled out of that report, put into a letter that Mr. Lutz signed. I will tell you that from prior to I came into the city in 2010 as city clerk. Yep, that page right there. And so, you know, prior to my joining the city in 2010, we have groups that are created by ordinance. We have groups created by resolution. We have groups created by motions. We have groups that are created by a couple of council members who got together and decided they wanted a group. I will share with you, individual council members have no authority. Doesn't mean they don't believe that, but individual council members have zero authority, never have. They've operated that way for many, many years, but the charter doesn't vest any authority in a council member or even a committee of council. So when people talk about the committees of council have approved things, those committees have no power and never did. The council rules very clearly have said from the beginning of time that committees have no independent power or authority. They only make recommendations to the full body. And I think that sort of reflects a growing awareness that we've had here in more recent years about what that really means, because at least it's my understanding that in previous years and decades, council committees would take actions and people would assume that was the action of the council. But that wasn't the action of the council, that was the action of the committee. And the council didn't, you know, vote to ratify that as their decision. So
Mr.
again,
Carl,
yep.
just a quick question, a point of clarification. And I don't have strong opinions about this, but I'm just trying to understand the history a little bit.
Yep.
And what I heard you describe as the ROC was maybe informally set up in 2007, associated with the 2007 master plan. But what I'm reading here in the 2007 master plan is a reference to the ROC being set up formally by the city council in 2000. And if I go to, you know, I'm the one sharing the screen, so forgive me, but this is the 2000 master plan. I'll go to the head of it. And then it kind of, in the first section, chapter 1, it talks about this master planning committee that looks like it morphed into the ROC and in early 2000 or mid 2000 or late 2000, what Vita is describing, but it does feel like there was kind of a formal action by the city council in 2000 for the ROC. And then the other thing I just want to reference is that this is a PowerPoint that Beth Grossen provided. I can't remember when, but like 4 years ago or something. And and this is one of her slides. And so it feels to me like there's just a little bit of discontinuity between what you're describing as an informal process in 2007 from, I think, with the historical and institutional knowledge of this group being like, well, no, it was set up and codified by the city council in 2000.
Yep. And so if you go back to that group that you just showed, there was an agreement amongst multiple groups. I'll point out those neighborhood associations are also not official city agencies, right? A neighborhood association group is not a city group. That's a nonprofit group. Every neighborhood association is a nonprofit entity. The city has a partnership with them to provide some funding to them, but they're not city agencies. And so here again, what they've done is there's been an agreement between these neighborhood groups, other interest groups in the area, and at least between, let's say, the mayor and the Ward 5 and 7 council member, that they're going to all appoint people to this group. There's nothing that would necessarily prevent that from happening. I guess what I'm trying to clarify is I can't find an official action of the council that creates this body, notwithstanding all of this records that you're showing and that I'm looking at on this other screen, that says they would do it. I think maybe the intention was, if I were to guess, hazard a guess, and that's guessing, the council at that time, in adopting this master plan, gave its tacit approval to the creation of a group. And through tacit, unofficial authorization, this group has existed for many, many, many years and worked. But I can't come back and tell you where that authority derives from and how many seats and who makes them, other than a PowerPoint that says the mayor gets a seat, the Ward 5 council member gets 2 seats, or whatever it was. I don't have that piece in front of me. And so whatever those agreements were from back in those days is what continues to operate until someone makes a change to that.
Casey, the last chapter of the 2000 master plan that was approved by the city council was what created, or it was in that chapter that we strongly recommended the creation of this group. And when the city council approved, and then the letter comes from MCDA, the assumption is that the city council has kind of, maybe through a back door, approved the creation of this body. So how do you go from there?
Again, I would say I don't disagree with that. I would add the word that they've given their tacit approval to it being created.
But it's the whole city council. It was approved bar none by the city council.
They've allowed certain members and the mayor to make appointments over the years, and they've not gone back to revisit that prior decision. That's the only thing I can conclude. There's no evidence that would prove otherwise, that there was a recommendation that a committee be formed. The only connection we have from the master plan that says there should be a committee formed and it should be charged with this work. And then there's a letter from MCDA, which is not the city council. It is the city council sitting in a separate legal capacity, right? The MCDA is not the city council. It is a legal entity created under the laws, and the 13 council members are the MCDA. But you got a letter from the MCDA, from Chuck Lutz, a staff person, who said, you're appointed, you're it. That's the only connection between the adoption of the master plan and this creation of a group. Let me be clear. I am not saying that this group doesn't have any authority to conduct its business or do things. It's just that we have not created you in the way that we formally create groups and boards and commissions, at least since 2010, since I came in 2010. That's all I'm saying. That you were created in some manner, notwithstanding, I won't dispute that. I can't dispute that.
Can I ask a question? Is that okay, Vita and Don?
Yeah.
I'm tracking all the information that's being shared. Here's my question. And someone nice had put a question in the chat and I echoed it, but I guess I understand now what's generated the topic of conversation. What I'm wondering is, what difference does it make? What is sort of the political capital that this group retains? And it does sound like there is a difference of whether or not city council appoints and mayor appoints, but what is the recognition, I guess, for Jim and Andrea and CPED? Does it make any difference in terms of recognizing this community group and the work in Bassett Creek Valley, for ROC? I mean, does it make any difference how this group is structured or not structured? Is there any agenda about this group being sunsetted from the city's perspective or continuing on for a set term? I mean, I guess I just don't, I would just like people's opinions on that, because I think that helps this group decide what we want to do, right?
Yeah, I think I want to weigh in a little bit on this too, having been around this group since the inception. And that is that, from our perspective, and I think from many people in the city's perspective, the input and direction that we have given to any developments that have gone on here have been valued and useful. Whether we're a formal or informal group, I think that advice and its value of that advice would be the same, if I'm understanding this correctly. And I guess my question to you, Casey, is, am I on the right track here? That on into the future, continuing as an informal group as we are, will it still have the same value? And also keeping in mind that much of the open area in that banana area that's part of the master plan has not been touched yet. So there's plenty of reason for us to stay involved.
I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Brennan, who is the director, and the previous speaker, I believe Ms. Chu, was raising the same sort of point. What is the value to formal versus informal? And maybe I don't understand what the goal or intention of bringing us here to talk about that tonight is. So I'll back up and own that one. I'm not clear on what the distinction is. I personally don't know that it makes a difference to the mayor and council, whether you are an official group created by a resolution with an official task. I don't know that that matters to them. In my conversation with one of the council members, a long-serving council member who has a long association, draw your own conclusions, I don't think it matters to her. She's going to listen to this group, whether you're an official or an informal group. I think that matters not.
That's my read on it too.
I'm pretty sure that Andrea Brennan, as the executive director of CPED, one of our biggest departments that's responsible for some very critical issues about development and land use, property rights, zoning, regulatory enforcement. I'm pretty sure that she's going to be sensitive to where elected officials get their input and advice from, but I'll let her speak for herself on in terms of what her value of official versus unofficial is.
Of course.
I would say that, I mean, we, as a department, CPED, we interact with both official and unofficial or informal groups. And I don't really think that advice from one or the other is more or less valuable. I really don't. I think that, just as we have, I think, evolved in the way that advisory committees are structured, as Casey was describing, since the ROC was formed. We've also, I think, really done more to develop our the engagement that we do, and the level of engagement, and with community members, with stakeholders. And I think we had the Minneapolis 2040 comprehensive plan is an example of planning process where we did extensive community engagement. So I would say that that is another change from the time when the ROC was formed, is that we seek engagement in many, many different ways. So we have always valued the input that we've received from the ROC, and we absolutely continue to do that, to value it. And we will make sure that we are, like I said, that we are available as a resource to you, and that we make sure that whatever input we get from you on any kind of planning process or development, that we make sure that our elected officials and the public see that input. So we definitely, I mean, if the question is, do we as a department still find value in the advice that we get from the ROC, the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. Is that input valued more or less than like official committees? I don't think so.
And can I just ask for a follow-up? And I'm sorry, I see Fred has his hand raised too. And I am so new by comparison to many of the long timers on this committee. But can I ask, then is there a shift? Because there certainly was, I remember a discussion when Beth left about, would there be city presence? I mean, so is there a shift in terms of being an informal committee versus formal? And, Jim has stepped in to recent meetings. I mean, is there a shift about that in terms of having that sort of access and face-to-face correspondence with CPED, with the city? Does that shift if there's an informal, we stay as is?
There would be if you all would, if your preference is to give a recommendation to, it would most likely go probably to the council member, one of the two council members who has been actively engaged with this group. And, they would, I think, and Casey, please interrupt me if I'm misstating this, but my understanding is that the action to, the action to create an advisory committee in a formal way has to happen by resolution of the council, and it's council members who introduce those resolutions. So it would be, you would make a recommendation to one or both of those council members, and they would then decide if they wanted to introduce a resolution that would then have to be approved by, is this a 7 vote or a 9 vote? Casey?
7.
7.
Well, yeah, 7 minimum.
So it'd have to be a minimum of 7 votes by the city council. And then if the council does that and they formally create this committee, then that does create a level of administrative responsibility that we will have to, designate staff. So we will have to make sure that the committee is, adheres to all of the process and procedures that are now in place. And that has to do with, noticing meetings, making sure meeting minutes are captured and that they're available online. And all of this is on through
but, and I understand that, Andrea. I guess what I'm asking is, and so someone else jump in, and again, Fred has had his hand up, so maybe I'll just pass it to him before you even comment. What I'm asking is whether or not there would be city staff presence at ROC committees, as there have been in the past, or as at this committee's request. And I'm just going to pass it to Fred because I'm not trying to dominate with my questions. I'm just trying to understand the choice of structures and how it's recognized, the flow of communication. But Fred, you have your hand up, so I'm sorry. Let me just be quiet.
I just thought I would offer a summary of what I'm hearing that I suspect other people share, is that the influence of ROC or a group like ROC probably depends more on its reputation and its consistency and its quality of its advice and so on than it does on the informal versus formal. But I would be interested in hearing how the formal informal affects staff cooperation with the group.
Andrea, do you want me to take a stab at
Sure,
this?
please.
I mean, I don't want to speak for you because this is your department, but I will say that, again, from a higher level perspective, if you're a city group, you're a group that's formed by a formal action of the mayor and the council. When we create those resolutions, a couple of the specific items that are identified is which city department is expected to provide support to that body. So our formal boards and commissions are all aligned with a department. That department is expected to provide not only professional support to the work of the group, but as Andrea was mentioning, a certain level of administrative support that my office sort of sets the standards for, and then they're enforced by the other departments. So for example, I know what my office deals with is legal notice and publication, agendas, agenda management, minutes, reports, how those are all processed through the city's website and available for public access. So there's a minimum threshold of administrative support. There's a level of professional support and assistance that comes with that. That is, I would say, a benefit, a clear benefit of being a formal group established by the city. That this group has had access to the professional staff of CPED, and that resource and support is probably a combination of many things. Again, this predates me, so I'm guessing at most. Andrea, correct me when I'm wrong, but the fact that you invoked Chuck Lutz's name, who was the deputy director of CPED for decades, means that he was involved in the early formation of this group. He brought with him certain resources, therefore, because he recognized the importance that the group played. That has continued over the years with various planners and professional staff who have come forward and played a role with this group and interacted. But I would say that's not an expectation of CPED for an informal group. It's not something CPED would do for other informal groups with whom they work on a regular basis. And Andrea can step in and correct me, but I would assume that other informal groups like the ROC, or what we're calling an informal group, CPED may work with them, but it's probably not somebody from CPED comes to every one of your meetings and is just there to listen and be available for questions and give input. It's you want somebody there, you have to put in a request that we need a planner at this meeting to talk about this subject. And so depending on availability and capacity, that might be accommodated. But it's a more distant relationship than it would be formalized by the mayor and the council, where there's an expectation that those groups that are created formally by the governing body are supported by city resources.
Well said. I think that's a really good summary, Casey. Thank you.
One of the things that is bothering me a little bit is that it seems as though the city has developed rules and regulations subsequent to our formation. And where we were a volunteer group that just advises, the city council member and then the city council's member advises CPED on what they want, or the person who's been with us from CPED, whether it was Tom, whether it was Daryl, whether it was Beth, they bring us the idea and they say, what do you think? And because there's a master plan, and Jim, you were involved in one of those, and that was changing the master plan so that the line that comes from the north, the LRT line that's going to come from the north and goes through the Bassett Creek Valley, we had to change one of our requirements or one of our desires for that section. And so we did. We met, we had several meetings, and we changed the master plan to accommodate that. So I'm having a hard time understanding why, because the city has changed, why we have to change, why we cannot, because we have done quite a bit, actually. If you look around at the things that ROC over the 24 years or so have managed to bring to the valley. I mean, the valley is no longer, I don't know, the black hole where nobody crosses 394 because it's dangerous over there. So I really need to know what the benefit is for changing how we conduct ourselves, how we look after the Bassett Creek Valley, how we encourage development in there, how we try to keep our hands so that gentrification doesn't occur as development does, all those kinds of things. I mean,
Vita, do you mind if I restate a question back to you and your members? And I don't mean this to be impertinent or rude in any way. I mean this honestly. Why do you want to change? I guess I'm assuming that the reason we're here is that the body itself wants to make a change. If the Bassett Creek Redevelopment Oversight Committee is working, as I have no understanding to assume it isn't working, by all intents and my understanding, it's working. So I don't know why you would want to change that.
Oh, it isn't that we want to change. Andrea, at the last meeting we had, was suggesting that the rules and regs of the city have changed and that we would have to conform. We would have to register, we would have to publish agendas, we would have to publish, and that's not how we've worked. We've worked by consensus.
I think Andrea is correct when she says that if you're to be a formal, established group.
We're recognized as an informal group and people listen to what we have to say the way we are. So my question is, why would we want to change?
That's not a question I can answer. Your members have to answer that.
Okay.
And if your members say they don't wish to change, I'll go way out on a limb here and say, I'm not sure that anything in the work and scope and life of the ROC changes. It may not have as much direct connection to CPED. I can't speak for the CPED department, Andrea can, but recognizing that they have limited capacity, they have limited means, they may not be able to have a professional planner attend all your meetings. I'm fairly confident, not speaking for her, that if you were to advise the department that you needed someone at a meeting or that you wanted to have input on a plan, I'm not going to bet my entire paycheck, but I would bet a good portion of it that the CPED director is smart enough politically to know that she and her team are going to listen to you. So again, without being impertinent, I'm not clear why I'm here, and I'm not sure why you would want to change from what works for you. I'm under the understanding that you want me here to tell you how to change because you want to. What I'm clearly hearing now is you don't, and you feel I'm forcing you to. Let me be clear. Never have I chosen to say the ROC must change.
So I think the purpose of why we wanted you here is so that you could explain the formal versus informal structure to us, which I think you have. So I think what they're saying is that if we want to be a formal group, we need to get a resolution passed. But if we want to remain informal, they will still take our advice just like now, like we're giving it, and we don't have to adhere to the city's requirements for regulations and administration.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd say to you, having put that out there, and somebody I think said they're recording this, please don't share this broadly with anyone else. We don't need more informal groups created. There's a reason we've gone to standardization, right? Because the public expects access to notices and meetings and records and things like that. So the fact of the matter is, I would say you are grandfathered in because I cannot find a record that creates you. I'm disclosing that very clearly. Times were wild and fast and loose in 2000. I can't speak for the city clerk at the time. Clearly this shows poor record keeping on that person's part. There's a special place for those people later. That's not me. And so as I'm the city clerk, I'm telling you that if they create a group, we're going to have a resolution. It's going to very clearly set up what that group does. I don't allow departments. Like Chuck Lutz would not be able to write a letter like he wrote to you in 2007. I wouldn't allow it. I can't go back in time and take away Chuck Lutz's letter. I can't go back and change council actions in 2000. So, take this grandfather pass, run with it, be happy, do good work, make good things happen for the people of the Valley like you have already. I think Andrea and her team are more than happy to work with you. I haven't heard her say she refuses.
Yes, we are. Absolutely. 100%.
Don, you want to take a vote?
Well,
I've been very vocal.
Yeah, I think so. I just have a couple of comments first. I guess Andrea and Casey, thank you very much for being here, because I think we kind of wondered what the differences were. What I'm understanding is our value as we are is as much as good as if we were formal, and I haven't heard from any of our members that we really want to change. I have heard that we would certainly miss the kind of support that we've gotten from CPED people being at our meetings. I do understand that, you know, at some of those meetings, maybe there wasn't a real need. And I think if we can get some commitment from you, Andrea, that if we need somebody there, that you would try to provide it, I think we would all be pretty comfortable.
I have a question. It's not, the staff that has come to ROC meetings has brought us a great deal of information in terms of this group is, you know, how will we know what is being considered for development in the valley so that we can perhaps like have people come and make a presentation and we can talk about it from the point of view of two neighborhoods and businesses. How, if we don't have ongoing somebody from CPAD providing information to us that we can consider, how will we have information to give back to CPAD?
I can ask Jim if he has insight on that question. What I can say is that is a, I mean, that's whether that doesn't matter. That issue, I don't think would be affected by a formal or informal group. I mean, the formal advisory committees that we have set up are dependent on, you know, staff bringing issues to that group in large part, and not every single thing is brought to those groups. And so, you know, I don't know, Jim, if you have some perspective on how we've done that historically, or maybe even a member here has some, could share some perspective on how that's been done historically. And I don't see a reason why we couldn't continue in that same capacity.
So historically, and I mean, I'd have to say exactly right, but Beth, you know, Beth would bring a lot of stuff and she'd be aware of stuff. We have a North Sector team that meets in the city. We don't meet as much as we used to. And so, I mean, there'd be lots of times where I'd find out about something in the Valley. I'd tell Beth about it. Beth would do a little extra legwork and bring it to the group. And there were other people who did that as well. So we'll continue to do that. If I find out about stuff happening from my colleagues in the department, I will continue to say that it should come to this meeting and try and brief you on it. And Andrea has committed that, and I've committed. I've said I'm happy to do it because I'm finding the North Side interesting. It's to keep going to these meetings. But the expectation setting I would do is, you know, that was a big part of Beth's full-time job, and it's not a big part of my full-time job. So it may not be to the level that Beth provided, but I'm trying to think if I'm answering your question, but I'm saying we did that as a North Side team, you know. So Beth brought a lot of stuff to you guys, but some of that was she found out on her own from having her ear to the ground. That's going to be harder for me to do. But the stuff that we were doing in our department that we knew about, that stuff shouldn't be a problem for us to be. It should be something we should be able to continue to keep doing. But her knowing about Ned going into the EXL labs or whatever, because she found out from talking to somebody, that may not happen as much with me or whoever is doing it right now, just because we don't necessarily have the capacity to do that right now.
Andrea, I would ask, and Jim, I would ask that if, regardless of how frequently you come, Jim, that it would be the same person so that we develop the working relationship with whomever this person is, like we had with Tom, we had with Daryl, we've had with Beth. But if it's constantly changing, I think that would be harder for us to deal with than if we have the same person. And I hope that's not putting a burden on you, Jim.
No, and I'll be the person. It's going to be a little bit tougher when everything goes, because I have a lot of these things, especially with the blue line and all of that. It's going to be a little tougher when it gets to being in-person meetings. And, you know, God willing, I'll be around for a long time and I can keep coming to meetings. But we weren't planning on swapping out a bunch of different staff people. I said that I would do it.
Okay.
And I'm a lifer. I'm a lifer at the city unless something else is being planned behind my back. So
We appreciate your commitment.
Yes,
Beth?
I do thank you all for coming and talking to us. It's very helpful.
Vita, you suggested that we should probably have a vote, but I think we should have a motion and a second before we do that. Would somebody make a motion?
I'll make a motion to thank Casey, Andrea, and Jim for their time tonight and to continue moving forward as we have been with pretty much no change.
Is there a second to that motion?
Seconded.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passed.
At my age, I don't
Thank you
like.
for your
Congratulations, everyone.
Casey, that was brilliant. I really am glad that you're the city clerk. That was amazing knowledge tonight. Appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being
Yes,
here.
I also want to thank my colleague Casey.
Thanks,
for-
Andrea.
Oh, yes,
Appreciate
thank you.
your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your service and all of the work and dedication that you show to the city and the Bassett Creek Valley. And we are excited and look forward to our continued working relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All
Now
right.
we should give the floor to Michael.
Yes, we can start the second half here with Michael Marvin.
Is it Marvin or Maven?
Maven, I think.
It's Munson.
Oh, is it, I have it. Munson?
There's a Munson down there.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Mike Munson. I'm with Maven Development Group. I'm the project lead for the 250 Fremont project, and thank you for letting me present, and thank you for all the work you do at the ROC. And I'll just start by telling you a little bit about Maven. We're a local Minneapolis-based developer. We recently just completed the Rand Tower downtown, a historic renovation project, as well as the Laurel Apartments right by Basilica of St. Mary. We own a dozen or so properties in Minneapolis, and I look forward to meeting you all, hopefully one day in person and working alongside you all as future neighbors. I'm excited to share some plans that we have in the works for the 250 Fremont project. So I'm going to try to share my screen here.
Michael,
I don't see that.
Okay. Did you see the letter that we sent supporting your development?
I sure did, and thank you so much for that.
Okay. And did you see the concerns we had raised about it?
I did, and yes, I'm gonna walk you through this, and I'm hoping to address a lot of them, and then we can open it up for discussion if that works. So 250 Fremont, I believe everyone is familiar with the project, located on Fremont and Second here. It's the big dirt lot. I think someone worded it as the dumpster farm at last month's meeting, which I thought had a nice ring to it. Our vision here really is to raise the two small commercial buildings and replace it with about 350 apartment units. And there will be a few steps in between that, which I'll walk through. But here is a rendering. It'll give you a sense of kind of the scale of the project. So if you see the dirt lot here, then going forward, here is what the proposed building massing will look like. We're really excited about the Fremont project. We're excited to activate this node in the Harrison community to increase the density, increase the tax base. We're not here to change this area. Our goal is to provide quality workforce housing, which we've seen a huge demand for here.
Coming up right over Fremont, that's where Van Wyck Boulevard goes. This is now a vacant lot.
John, you're not muted.
Our target market is really the 70%-ish area median income folks. So we're talking the teachers, firefighters, entry-level downtown workers. Our rent levels will be in line with the other new product that we'll be delivering here this year and next year. As far as parking goes, we're showing 150 stalls for 350 units. We don't think the typical renter should need a car. These people are bikers, they're walkers, Uber takers, Metro Transit riders, and the like. The building as proposed is 6 stories, 5 stories of wood framing over 1 story of concrete. The unit mix will be studios, 1 bedrooms plus dens, 2 bedrooms, and walk-up townhome units at the first floor here. As you can see, we're having a large amenity deck on our second floor. One side will be landscaping, the other side will be a pool. Our plan now is to use inclusionary zoning TIF, which allows us to set aside 50%, or rather 20% of the units at 50% area median income. So that's about 73 units that will have rent levels at 50% AMI. And we think this is a good bridge into the Harrison community. Where we are now as far as project status, we're in the design and coordination phases. We're working through construction pricing. We're getting very smart on the soils and the earthwork, smarter than we may have been 4 or 5 months ago. We're looking into options for deep foundation systems. We're talking to financing and capital partners, and we're moving quickly and on track to close in the spring in just a few months. The construction duration is slated to be about 24 months and hoping to open for resident occupancy in spring 2024. A few other things which I believe were mentioned as concerns or at least points of discussion. As for the studios, we have 100 of them, so 100 of the 350. And when we say studios, it's not necessarily an efficiency unit. It's more of the alcove type for the majority of them. So there will be a separate bedroom living space with its own balcony right around 450 square feet. We are completely aware of how studios are leasing, and with an investment of this size, we really more than anyone are hyper focused on making sure it's successful. For the capital stack and the financing, you're correct that this will be private capital, likely opportunity zone funds. We're still narrowing in on groups and talking to some outside capital, and on the debt side, some local lenders that have shown interest. Our starting rents are right around the 900s for the affordable units, and the market rate rents, yes, they're 2 years out, they'll be dictated by the market, but if I had to guess today, it would be right around 1,100 or 1,200 for starting. With that, that's a lot of me talking. I'd love to field any questions you have.
Michael, I'm curious, and I don't ask these questions with any agenda. I work with arts-based projects, and we're affordable housing developer for artists, and we have Northside right in the Harrison neighborhood. So I'm curious, is there? I thought that I heard at our last meeting there was an affordability mix. What is that mix?
Yes, so we are getting some feedback. Under inclusionary zoning, we're choosing, at this point, we're electing the inclusionary zoning TIF option, which means that 20% of the units, or 73 units, will be affordable at 50% area median income.
And then just one more question, because you're a private developer, and then this is like my personal mission-driven question. What's the long-term intentions you have as a developer of the 15 projects that you have in Minneapolis or the Twin Cities or whatever you were saying? Is it part of your company's strategy to hold on to these a long time, or is it a strategy to roll those over in a future sale?
Sure. Yeah, great question. Maven is a medium to a long-term holder, and it really depends project by project. With this one being an opportunity zone deal, we will be an owner for at least 10 years.
Right, and I'm thinking, that's my question beyond what you're obligated to. What's the personal intentions? I understand markets change and sometimes you can't keep things in perpetuity, but just as a, what's, I don't know what your role is at Maven, but I mean, what do you think Maven's strategy is as a developer?
Sure. So our strategy is to hold for at least 5-10 years for this project, at least 10. Every deal is different. Every market is different. 10 years from now, we believe this project will be even more successful with the coming in the development of the light rail. And just as we see kind of future development in this area, I can't look 10 years ahead, but we're not a merchant developer in the sense that we're building it and selling it before we're even done.
Okay.
Michael, one of the things that I have noticed is that when the developer holds onto the properties that they have built, regardless of whether they're selling them or renting them or whatever, that those properties tend to be kept better than properties where the developer just within a very few years moves off. We've had more developments torn down because they weren't looked after. Ian, for instance, hangs on, period. How would you change so that you could do the same kind of long-term holding on?
Sure. So with a project of this scale, there's too much money in it and too much money behind it to let things like deferred maintenance, to let things like poor operations surface to begin with. We're planning on partnering with an institutional property manager, for instance, that would not put their name on a project like this if it was being neglected. So we have every intention of making sure the upkeep, the maintenance, everything is done
the
well.
gardens, you've got the sidewalks, you've got.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you sell in 10 years, what happens to the affordable units?
The affordable units are grandfathered in for 30 years.
How large are the those efficiency units?
450 square feet.
Wow, that's small.
Can you diminish those and knock them together to make 1 and 2 bedroom type things and fewer studio?
Is the concern the density, or is it the market and absorbing those units of that size?
No, I think the concern is that there isn't that much market for studios, but there is a huge need for slightly larger residences.
Sure. I mean, it's something that we're looking at constantly, and we have experts, boots on the ground, property managers weighing in on this all the time. At this point, we're comfortable with the unit mix. And like I said, these aren't the teeny efficiencies where your bed is facing the kitchen and you can't do anything but sleep in it. It's more of an alcove type unit. So there is a separated bedroom sleeping space from the living room and like a little desk area. We're comfortable, and our investors are comfortable that these studio units will do well. Otherwise, they would not be willing to put their money up for it.
Michael, do you have a floor plan of those studio units readily available, please?
Let me see what you can.
I'm just gonna chime in and say, I know Mackenzie has her hand up.
Thanks. Michael, I was just gonna ask, are there any 3 bedrooms?
There are no 3 bedrooms at this time.
Okay, so the largest is 2?
Correct.
And has it been determined how many of the 2 bedrooms will be at the 50% AMI?
Everything will be pro rata, so there will be the 20% of the 2 bedrooms.
Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah, I just want to make sure there's some affordable housing for our families or larger groups.
Having a hard time tracking down the studios because I'm at home and can't access our drive, but as soon as I can find them, I can forward to the group.
Hey, quick question on the parking. This is Eric Elgin. You'd mentioned, I could be quoting you wrong, but 150 spots. And you'd mentioned you're expecting kind of the prospective tenants to not have cars. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit more about the projection there? I think that was an area we had some additional questions, and others feel free to chime in with more expertise here. But I think that ratio, I guess, just my non-educated mind on this is thinking that's a tad low based on what we know in the neighborhood.
Yes, definitely. So 150 parking stalls for 350 units. This is a transit-oriented development. We will do a lot of our marketing tailored towards Minneapolis living without a car, or tailored to bikers, to walkers, to people that will take the bus to work, the people that Uber. That said, I acknowledge that this parking is light. It is something that keeps me up at night, quite frankly. Can we lease all the remaining of these units without parking? It's very cold here in the winter. It is also incredibly expensive to build a second story of this parking deck. We just got an estimate and it's $4.5 million, and I have a feeling that might be light. We plan to do everything we can to implement car sharing, ride sharing, zip cars, biking. And it's just hard making it pencil to add 2 stories of parking, because it's not just the parking. You're doing additional siding on the building. It's additional wood. It's additional time to the construction schedule. And quite frankly, it's hard to get above that kind of 50% or 0.5 ratio, even with the city and their requirements.
Understood. Makes sense. Thank you for the detail on that.
Michael, I'll ask you about the parking and trying to make less use of the vehicle. With Southwest LRT going into delays, how does that impact your project, since you're essentially kind of relying on the station down at Bassett Creek?
Yes, it definitely impacts us. It's a reason why right now we're looking at what does it cost from a timing standpoint, from a money standpoint, from everything to add more parking to this project. As far as closing and starting of construction, it does not delay us as far as our financing goes, but it does delay the overall success as a transit-oriented development.
You guys have done soil examination to see how much water is down there, how much you have to support the building and things of that kind?
Yes, we sure have.
Is that why you have your green space on the second floor rather than on the ground level?
It is, and it's also for the parking is why that's on the second floor. But it's why you see that the building is raised up about 5 feet over grade at that main intersection, when we would way rather it be right there for pedestrian realm purposes. But because you cannot have occupiable space X amount of feet above the water table, it's just a reality that we're working with.
Okay.
I applaud your encouraging less dependence on private automobiles by having less parking. In this era of climate change, more and more is being considered of going all electric, not using natural gas even. Would you consider that?
We are, for instance, we're sizing the electrical capacity by adding additional transformers to allow for EV car charging stations at the lot, should they so require down the line. As far as the whole building operating on electric, at this point, we do not have gas ranges, it's electric. So I would say the majority of our utility uses is electric. I don't know if I answered your question exactly.
What are the total project costs right now, Michael, for this project, for this development?
Sure. So we are, as you can imagine, the volatility right now, right around $80 million all in. Knock on wood, that's where we are when we get our sub pricing back here in the coming weeks.
I was wondering, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm wondering about your stormwater runoff. You look like you've got a lot of hard space there. Stormwater runoff is the biggest polluter of our lakes and streams these days. Do you have anything going on there?
Yes, definitely. We have a water retention or detention area at the northwest part of the site, as well as a huge stormwater tank at the southwest at the corner. That basically will house any additional water or in a flood event too.
Okay, nothing to filtrate the water. It just contains it and then lets it out slowly afterwards. Is that sort of it'll be flood control, but doesn't do any filtration of anything.
Correct.
Okay, it'd be nice to have some of that, I think.
Michael, how is the parking being divvied out? Is that an additional fee or is it associated with certain units?
Yes, it will be an additional charge on monthly rent.
Okay, so just kind of a first come, first serve.
Right.
Mike, this is David. Just going back to Dave Stack's question about filtration. It's been my experience, and I don't know if this translates to yours, that we can't filtrate into the soils here for a couple of reasons. One of them is the contamination that is in the ground on many sites that we're trying to develop in the valley. And the second is the soil composition is mostly fat clay soil. So it's very difficult to get water to actually get into the soil. Most of the challenges we have is the water coming out of the soil. And so I wonder if you've had any commentary from your environmental and civil engineers with regard to whether or not you can filtrate into the soil on this site.
Thank you, David. I'm sure they are well aware about it. It's something that I need to get a little bit smarter on, but I can reach out to them and get more feedback there.
I'd like to mention that there are a lot of filtration rain gardens that don't infiltrate down into the soil. They have a impermeable clay liner or something that they'll have a pipe that'll capture the water and do a fair amount of infiltration. And a lot of the water then will also go to the plants that are growing in the rain garden.
Michael, will you do any recycling of the stormwater to provide sprinklers for your green spaces?
I love the idea. I don't know that we're far enough along that we've looked into that quite yet.
Don? If there are no more questions, is it time to shut down, let people go home?
I just wanted to say real quickly, Michael, as the owner of a building just east of you, I'm so glad to see that eyesore go, and I'm sure that the people at the health club are going to be just thrilled, and it becomes an amenity for you as well.
Thank you, Pat. I'll be sure to introduce myself from the neighborhood.
Okay, yeah, we'll be around.
Good to hear from you, Pat. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Michael,
Second.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
And actually, yeah, before we say that, Michael, is there anything else that we could be doing on the ROC to support you or to help this along? Just curious, anything else you need from us? I know you already have a letter out, but just curious if there's anything that you need from us.
Nothing at this point, and I appreciate the offer, and I will keep everyone in the ROC here in the loop as we progress.
We'll bring a shovel.
Then I reiterate my motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good
I have
night.
a question.
Thanks,
Jeff.
everyone.
I'm sending my emails to whiskey place. What's it called?
Royal Distillery?
Yeah. Have they closed?
Yeah, I think they have, haven't they?
Royal Foundry Craft Spirits is still open.
Is it still open?
Come have a drink. Open
Yeah, I'd
Thursday,
love
come
to.
drink.
Okay. I was just curious because I'm getting my emails coming back from the distillery email.
Are they reorganizing? Because I think they're chapter 11.
I have no idea. I just was
I
curious.
read it
Okay.
in the paper.
That's it.
Anyway. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see everybody.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Don't forget,
Bye.
next month, we are getting Southwest LRT.
Okay.
March
Bye-bye.
15. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.